and I'm here with William Lee Hahn, who is running for district judge for 258th Court, right?
That's correct.
I got it. And we wanted to hear from him and hear what he's going to be doing for our district as a judge and some of the ideas that you have. I've been reading through your material and whatever, and there's some really good stuff here. So first of all, let's find out about Lee Hahn. How about, I want to hear something about your family.
Okay, well, let's start with my history. I'm originally from Polk County. I grew up there. I'm proud to say that I have several generations of family on both sides that were Polk County residents. My mother was an elementary school teacher for almost 40 years in public schools in Polk County, Livingston, Goodrich, and Leggett. My dad was a U.S. Army veteran who also worked for many years as a letter carrier for the U.S. Post Office there in Livingston. They were both Polk County natives themselves and attended school there. I grew up in I guess, almost an ideal childhood. My grandparents had a farm.
Yeah.
They're just outside of Livingston. I spent a lot of time with them, was involved in 4-H, FFA, raising animals for livestock shows and things like that. Did all 12 years of public school in Livingston. I went away to Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, where I got my criminal justice degree in '87. Then I went to law school at the University of Mississippi and got my Juris Doctorate degree there in 1990. Was in private practice for a number of years. And did civil litigation with the firm and a little bit of criminal defense work as well. Made it back to Texas in 1994. I was offered a job with the Texas Attorney General's office in Austin, where I did civil rights and employment litigation for the state of Texas, the Texas prison system, DPS, and other state law enforcement agencies. Moved home in '96 and took a job with the district attorney's office as a felony assistant prosecutor at the time, and I've been there ever since. Became the elected district attorney in Polk County in 2007, and I'm currently serving and about to complete my 4th term, 16 years as the elected DA. You ask about my family. I'm married. My wife Nancy is involved in banking. She is a native of Honduras, which is very interesting. Brings an interesting perspective to my life. But we have 4 kids together. My oldest daughter lives in Mississippi. She went to Ole Miss like her dad did, and she's a family advocate for a child advocacy center in Oxford, Mississippi. So she's kind of in the same field that Dad is. My son, Will, went to Sam Houston State, like his father. He's involved in the pipeline sales and distribution business. He lives in the Houston area and has a very successful career. My other daughter, Carson, just graduated from high school. She graduated early, I'm proud to say. She's planning to attend Glenn College in Brenham beginning this fall.
Yeah.
And we also have a son, Matthew, who's a freshman at Livingston High School now, and he's involved in the band and a great kid, and we enjoy him as well. So that's a little bit about the family. So.
Excellent. Well, I didn't know, I hadn't heard anything about your family. Your wife, of course, we're friends on Facebook,
Right.
and so, but I didn't know anything about your kids. And I think it's awesome because you can relate, you know, when you have kids, especially in the school and then in the college and all that. We're working to get my grandson's scholarship stuff for college this next year.
Right.
And you can relate to the things that the people are going through.
Sure. Absolutely.
We talked the other day about the court, the drug court, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that. And one of the things you talk about is doing a night court. I think that's an excellent idea. You're right about people getting off work and then the one of getting in trouble because they miss work and whatever. Tell us a little bit about that.
So let me go about answering it this way. Prosecuting drug cases is very challenging. That's been my experience my entire career, and I think it's important that you distinguish between the type of drug cases you're talking about.
Right.
One is drug dealers, who we prosecute aggressively. We view them as a menace to society, and we go after those people. On the other hand, you have people that just have addiction issues, that become involved in drugs for whatever reason and have a hard time defeating that problem.
Right.
In my judgment, those are the kinds of people that you target for second chances, and you try to do as much as you can to get them pointed in the right direction. get them clean and sober, and avoid having to send them to prison, which can be very expensive. So throughout my career, there have been different ideas tried and utilized in Polk County to try to rehabilitate drug offenders with varying degrees of success. We've had some success stories over the years, and we've had a few failures as well. But and it kind of begins with identifying people who want help and want to get control of their life. Now, if you can do that successfully and people want to change, then you need to target getting them into programs that can help them. And so our probation department has a variety of different inpatient and outpatient programs to address varying levels of addiction. And one thing that I have seen done in the past, and I'll give credit to Judge Robert Trapp, who was a district judge when I first became a prosecutor, he had a lot of hands-on involvement with his probationers, especially on drug cases. He wanted them to know that he was paying attention to how they were doing, and didn't want them relapsing and getting into trouble, hanging out with bad people again. So he required them to come to court monthly for the first 3 months that they were on probation, and the probation officer could report to the judge how these people were doing. So they knew that the judge was concerned about them being successful. And so that idea, I thought, was pretty successful, actually, just based on my observation. You know, what I would like to do if I get the opportunity is to, you know, improve on that some. We found during COVID that we can use video technology very effectively in managing our caseloads and our dockets. And it's always made you know, better sense to me, particularly with people that are on probation. You want them working. You want them being productive members of society and taking care of their families. And it's not the best situation to require them to take off work to come to court if they have some issue related to their probation, or they need to come see the judge. That's just, it's counterproductive. And so we could do that at nighttime at little or no cost to the taxpayers, have them report by video, have the probation department give an update on how they're progressing, and then, you know, if there are problems that need to be discussed or addressed, you can do that. Ideally, they're doing good, and after some period of time, you can send them on their way and hope they complete their probation.
And I guess with the videos, you can tell how a person really is doing, as well as if they come in the courtroom.
You know, obviously it lacks the personal aspect of an in-court appearance, but by the same token, they're supposed to be reporting in person to their probation officer, so that the probation officer is already having that personal interaction with them. And, you know, I think what you're looking for in that situation is a report from the probation officer that this person's either doing what they're supposed to be doing or they're not. If they need some encouragement from the judge or some admonitions that, you know, certain types of behavior are not going to be tolerated, I think you can do that just as effectively by video as you can in person.
Yeah. What about the Veterans Court?
So Veterans Court is something that's very near and dear to my heart. As I told you, my dad is a veteran, and we've had a number of cases over the years that we've prosecuted with combat veterans, and those are, you know, in a lot of instances, they're very difficult cases to manage. In 2019, I began a discussion with District Attorney Brett Ligon, who's the DA in Montgomery County, who had created a Veterans Court program in Montgomery County. It's very robust and very effective in dealing with veterans who have combat-related PTSD issues, drug and alcohol abuse issues, and things of that. And he told me at the time that's something that we really ought to consider implementing in Polk County. I began discussing that with Benny Shiro, the district attorney here in Trinity County, and Robert Trapp, who of course is the DA over in San Jacinto County, and there seemed to be a consensus that there was something that needed to be done, especially with the number of veterans that were coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. So we reached out to state Veterans Court officials who were very enthusiastic about helping us get the program started. Under the law, the court was required to be approved by the Commissioners Courts of all three counties. It was to be a multi-county court system. And so Commissioners Courts of all three counties in 2019 approved and passed resolutions allowing for the creation of the Veterans Court. And then the district attorneys of all three counties discussed and drafted a joint memorandum of understanding or cooperative working agreement that identified how the program would operate and who the eligible participants would be for that program, and that was agreed upon. But for whatever reason, the funding for the implementation of that program has not been obtained. I certainly have reason to believe there is funding available there. We were led to believe in 2019 that grant applications would be approved if submitted, but I'm not sure that those have been submitted in a timely fashion. So it's still kind of hanging out there in
Right.
limbo. And now with the number of veterans that are coming back from Afghanistan, as our troops have been withdrawn from there, I anticipate there becoming an even greater need to identify eligible veterans and try to get them into the program. We've had a lot of veterans that have fallen through the cracks, that have been arrested, for example, on DWI offenses or misdemeanor or low felony drug offenses, and unless you identify them very early in the process, like when they're arrested or put in jail, a lot of times you don't know that this is a veteran that could benefit from
Right.
the types of services that the court would provide. So, if I'm elected, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and get the grant applications started, filed, and hopefully as soon as I'm sworn in, we can start adding veterans into the court. The 258th was designated to be the principal court for the Veterans Court because it's a unique situation. It has, by law, it has felony and misdemeanor jurisdiction.
Right.
To hear both kinds of cases, whereas the 411th just has felony jurisdiction but not misdemeanor. So 258 was ideally suited and is ideally suited to handle veterans that have misdemeanor charges. Sometimes they have companion felony charges, but you can deal with everything in one proceeding.
How about, I hear a lot, let me see how I want to say this, hard on crime. I mean, it's got to stop. We got to be hard on crime. Our jails and our court systems are backed up right now. I mean, they're closing jails, they're closing prisons. I know of cases personally that have been sitting in the courts for a very long time. Some people have been sitting in jail for a long time and never have an opportunity to go before a judge except for bail or whatever. How is that going to be handled if you're going to be hard on crime, but there's a blockage in the jail system and the court system?
I think it starts with the understanding that people are going to be held accountable for their criminal bad decisions. If they know and expect that if they go to court, a judge or a jury will hold them accountable for what they've done, it creates an incentive for them to become realistic
Right.
about their case and to attempt to negotiate some type of agreed disposition with the district attorney's office. And I can tell you from personal experience, juries in Polk, San Jacinto County, and Trinity County are historically very tough on crime, especially
Yes, they are.
certain types of crimes, violent crimes, child molestation, and things of that nature. And I think a judge's sentencing philosophy should mirror what juries typically do in that county. There needs to be some level of consistency. Of course,
Right.
both need to be fair and impartial and make good decisions, but if your juries in that county are tough on crime, the judge should be too. And for people that are arrested and charged, if they understand that there may be a day of reckoning for them that could have, major consequences for their life, then they're going to become realistic about trying to move their case quickly. And once you get that process going, obviously we've had issues like COVID that's,
Right.
can't be anticipated and controlled, but, once the courts are back up and running effectively, you schedule cases for trial, you make people understand that they're about to go to trial and get ready, and that creates, some momentum and incentive for cases to get resolved, and the ones that don't get resolved, you try them. So.
Yeah. You said you did criminal and civil, and we were talking the other day about family. I know family is a big issue. Of course, you've got the drug involved. You have so much of that, and that's just destroying families everywhere. What about the family courts, and what about the family situations? We have we have cases of kids that right now that have been taken away from their parents, kids who are staying with other people because they can't go home. What about the family courts? I know it's really been slow.
Yeah. Well, there again, a lot of the family law cases have been slowed by the COVID backlog as well. But what you need, of course, is a judge that manages his docket in an efficient and effective way, where particularly in the cases that you're alluding to, where there's some child abuse issues, kids are in foster care, maybe they're in removal proceedings that have been initiated by CPS. It's very important that kids in those circumstances have some some expectation of finality, I guess, for their future. Some understanding that their life's not just on hold, but in a position to go forward. And so you need to identify those cases, make sure they get set on a docket. If there needs to be a hearing, whether it's contested, or a trial at some point to get some resolution on those cases, you need to do it. I have always been passionate about the kid cases as DA. That's one area where I felt like, we can really make a difference in our communities is by helping and saving kids that are in bad situations. And so, we see them as criminal cases and sometimes as protective order cases and CPS cases, termination or removal proceedings in our office, and there's a lot of overlap with that oftentimes with divorce cases or child custody cases too. But the quicker a judge can get involved to get some resolution of those cases, the quicker these kids can get on with their life, and if they need counseling or some opportunity to heal, they can begin the process of doing that, rather than just having their lives on hold indefinitely.
You mentioned plea bargaining in your literature. In fact, you wrote quite a bit about it. You want to talk about that process and why that's so important?
Well, that's the reality of the world we live in our criminal justice system. You only have a limited amount of trial dates every year, whereas though in all three counties the caseloads, both felony and misdemeanor, are growing. These are three growing counties, and I don't know that our crime rates are off the charts, but it corresponds with the growth of the counties. And in order to effectively move those dockets, the reality is you've got to negotiate agreed dispositions. And most of the people, if your law enforcement agencies are doing their job correctly, they are guilty, and they're just trying to get the best deal that they can. So, prosecutor needs to be identifying, some realistic, just outcome for each of those cases, making offers to defense attorneys that are realistic, that clients can accept and live with, and you get those cases closed and people off to prison or on probation, whichever the case is, as quickly as you can, and you keep the process moving forward. But probably 90% of the cases that are charged in all three counties are resolved by some degree of plea bargaining. And the judge plays an important role in that. The judge, in many instances, is called upon to set punishment if it can't be agreed upon by the prosecutor and the defendant. And so, there again, the judge needs to be, consistent with what the community expects, what juries typically expect in terms of punishing people, whether they plead guilty or go to trial. And if a judge is firm but fair, that also facilitates plea bargaining, because defense attorneys can tell their clients, this judge is likely to give you, X number of years in prison if you go to him for sentencing. And so the prosecutor understands that, the defense attorney understands that, and they can meet somewhere in the middle.
Right. I want to ask, if you look back over your career of 26 years in the court system, excluding education, what is the most important thing you've ever done?
I think, it's the lives that we've affected positively. That's really a pretty easy question to answer. We have changed people's lives, both criminals and victims. And, it's moving to me when people that we've dealt with, either having prosecuted them or victims, come back and say, Mr. Hahn, you made a difference in my life. And for example, I had a lady that showed up at the office here several months ago that I wasn't expecting. She didn't have an appointment or anything. She just came in. And I was busy doing something, but I took the time, to go see, and walked out into our waiting room, and she just wrapped her arms around me and said, you know, you don't remember, but you prosecuted me a number of years ago, and I would have been dead if you hadn't done, you know, what you did. And
Right.
that's very humbling and rewarding when you can point to someone like that and say, yeah, I made a difference in this person's life, and in a way I impacted my community because I got this person, you know, straightened out where they could be productive. Now the victims that you help, those are by far the most rewarding. I've had victims that I've maintained contact with, you know, for years that, you know, you've done some good for them, you've helped them become healed or restored, and you know, particularly the children. I've alluded to that before. You know, if you can save children from you know, a lifetime of abuse or molestation or whatever, you know, they've been subjected to, get them out of that situation into a healthy environment, that's you know, it's very rewarding. I had a young girl that was a witness actually in a case where her brother was murdered in a very abusive situation. She came to court and testified, and I got to know her. She was like 6 or 7 years old at the time. This has been a number of years ago. She was removed, just like you were talking about earlier, by CPS and put in a foster home and ultimately adopted. And 2 years ago, she graduated from Sam Houston. So,
That's awesome.
I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
So, but as a judge, you know, you can still make a difference
Sure.
in people's lives and in the community. It's a little different perspective, but that's what it's all about, is changing lives in your community for the better.
Right. Before we stop, I want you to look into the camera, and I want you to tell the people, because they're the ones that are going to be doing the voting. Tell them what you can do as their district judge, and how you can help them personally. I mean, you know, we know that people sit in offices, but what can you do for them?
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity. As I said earlier, my name's Lee Hahn. I am a Republican candidate for 258th District Court of Polk, San Jacinto, and Trinity County. I'm a conservative. I've been a Republican throughout my career as district attorney. That is kind of the perspective that I would bring to the bench. My number one objective is, as district attorney and will be as judge, keeping our communities safe. All three counties, I think, want you know, a community where kids can be safe and older people don't have to worry about crime if they go out at night to go to Walmart or go to the grocery store, things like that. You know, these are growing counties because of our proximity to Houston. We're always going to have different types of issues, but I don't want these counties to become like Houston any sooner than they have to be. And the longer we can maintain some type of small town, community-minded spirit in all three counties, I think, you know, the happier and more comfortable people are. But yeah, my goal as a judge, it is different from being a district attorney, clearly, but nevertheless, the goal of the criminal justice system is to keep your community safe. And that's the kind of court I want to run. As a conservative judge, I would believe in individual accountability. I certainly believe in second chances for people that warrant it, but people that deserve to be punished, you know, they need to be punished. And so that's kind of my overall philosophy. There are some challenges with the case backlogs that are going to have to be addressed going forward, but I think my experience as district attorney certainly prepares me to meet those challenges head on and be a judge that the voters, the Republican voters of all three counties could be proud of. So I would certainly encourage everybody to vote. Early voting is February 14th. It goes on for 2 weeks, and then the primary election day is March 1st, and I would certainly ask for and appreciate everybody's support.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to
Sure,
us today.
absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.